Hi there. My name's Kathy. I'm with the Friends of Arlington's Planetarium, and with me today is Dr. Jim Thorne. And we're really thrilled that he has been willing to come on and do this special event for us. Right now, of course, the Arlington Planetarium is closed, not only because of COVID, but because there's some construction going on next door. And so we are shut down for a bit, but we are still here. The Friends are still working to make sure that science education is a thing in Arlington. And we hope that you will consider joining us and finding out about more of the things that we do. You can just go to our website at thefriendsoftheplanetarium.org and find out more about who we are and what we do. But what you're really here for, I know, is Dr. Jim Thorne. And Dr. Jim is going to entertain and inform us a lot here. So I'm going to go away and let Dr. Jim have the floor.
Thank you, Kathy. And again, as Kathy was saying, feel free to investigate more and learn more about the Friends of the Arlington Planetarium. Normally, under different conditions, we would be having an annual show in the planetarium itself, but because of the way things are going between the pandemic, as she mentioned, as well as the construction, we decided to do something different and try a live show, which will also be, I believe, available later as a recording. So what I'd like to talk with you about today is something called the Voices from the Sky. The idea is that someday maybe we might hear a special message from out in space. Many times I get asked that question when I have visited schools and talked with others about whether or not aliens actually exist. And the answer is we don't know. Right now people have been listening for quite some time. There was a famous gentleman named Carl Sagan who did a series called Cosmos, the original one back in 1980, who helped to set up the search for extraterrestrial intelligence many years ago. And they've been listening carefully for a long time. And at the same time, we now have telescopes out in space that are looking for extrasolar planets, meaning planets that go around other stars. When I was a kid, it was assumed that planets like that would exist, but we didn't know. And today, all these years later, there's actually a catalog of them. You can look up and see hundreds of planets that have been verified to be orbiting other stars out in the universe. I think that's very exciting, and in some cases people are trying to use the information about which stars have other planets to correlate to where they point the radio antennas to see if they can pick up a signal of some other intelligent life in the universe. As I say, we don't know if there is any, but people continue to listen. And soon I'm planning to do some more episodes of my television show called Space Quest with Dr. Jim, where we're going to examine that question more closely. Now, if you would like to see that show, it's on jimthornemusic.com. There are links to that of all 6 of the original episodes, which are now carried on public access stations across the United States, but conveniently on YouTube as well if you would like to see them. And in that case, you can hear my friends, Piper the robot and Vista the robot, as part of the show. They're here with me today just to listen in. But let me play for you a song which is the theme song of my television show, and the song is called The Stars Go By. Once we went into space to be part of a race so that people could walk on the moon. Many years have gone by, but again we will fly and return to the sky sometime soon. Can a girl fly through space to a planet? Could she pilot her spaceship and land it? Could she fly through the sky as the stars go by and bring home a space pomegranate? Many robots have flown to the greatest unknown and explored all the worlds of our sun. They have learned many things and gone through Saturn's rings, but there's so much that they haven't done. Can a boy fly through space in a rocket? Could he learn how to steer and to dock it? Could he fly through the sky as the stars go by and keep meteors in his pocket? You could learn to fly as the stars go by and reach for the endless sky. When the sun starts to sigh, many atoms will fly to be caught by the earth and remain. Glowing curtains of light will extend out of sight, painting colors that fall like the rain. Can the kids of the earth catch auroras? Could they have names like Tommy or Laura? Could they fly through the sky as the stars go by and catch northern lights in fedoras? You could learn to fly as the stars go by and reach for the endless sky. There's a world that's nearby with a red-colored sky and some others with ice all around. Some are big balls of gas where you'll never see grass, since they don't really have any ground. Can the kids of the earth reach the heavens? Could they answer the biggest of questions? Could they fly through the sky as the stars go by and reach for new worlds as they beckon? Could they fly through the sky as the stars go by and reach for new worlds as they beckon? Now that question about whether or not kids can go into space is what was being addressed in the song that I just played for you. And maybe someday, if it gets easy enough to travel in space, perhaps kids could go into space and visit the planets and maybe find out if there's other life either in our solar system or somewhere else in the universe. Now, one of the things that my friend Kathy was going to do is let me know if there are any questions that come up during the live part of this show. So if you do have anything you'd like to ask and you're tuned in, please feel free to go ahead and do that. Now, in the meantime, I want to talk to you about this idea of hearing voices from the sky. One of the things that we like to do is something called radio astronomy. Stars give off radio signals. Usually it's just random, sounds like static. If you're listening to the radio and you turn the knob in between the stations, then what you hear is some static. Did you know that some of the static that you hear when you're listening to the radio like that and you're not tuned into a strong station, some of that static is actually radio noise coming from the stars? In fact, that's how we found out stars give off radio, is when people wondered what that static was that they were hearing on their radio set. Turns out if you have a big radio antenna and you turn it through the sky, there are going to be places that are louder than others and stronger signals coming from different stars. That's called radio astronomy, and it's a very, very powerful thing. Now, at the same time, if there are any radio signals that come that have an intelligent message in them, that would be quite exciting. Maybe someday we can put a radio telescope on the moon. If we put it on the far side of the moon, it would be very quiet in the sense that the moon itself would block the radio noise coming from the Earth, because it keeps one face away from the Earth just like it keeps one face toward the Earth all the time. that would be a great place to try putting a radio telescope. Perhaps another place would be on Mars. On Mars, there's a very tall volcano called Olympus Mons. It's the tallest one in the solar system. And Olympus Mons would be a great place to put a radio telescope on top, because the Martian atmosphere is so thin that there's hardly any of it by the time you get to the top of that volcano. So maybe someday there will be a big radio telescope on Mars, just like perhaps on the moon. In any case, let's see here. I am going to go ahead and do for you a song called Voices from the Sky. If we heard a single word far away from space, we might hear loud and clear from another race. Maybe we could learn how to speak to them in turn and locate their home and birthplace. Could it be that we'll see how they like to live? Will we find that they're kind? Could they want to give? Maybe we could build an agreement of goodwill and find that we're all relatives. We'd be first to try learning how to fly all the way out to the voices from the sky. Tommy knew what to do, Laura made a plan. They could draft a mighty craft built to fly and land. It would go so far out to find the voices star and make a great leap for all men. We'd be first to try learning how to fly all the way out to the voices from the sky. If we were travelers to another star, we would be equipped to see on a trip so far. Everything on earth would be doubled in its worth, but home is the place where we are. We'd be first to try learning how to fly all the way out to the voices from the sky. Now let me explain just a moment what that means. If we were to hear a voice from the sky, an intelligence signal through a radio antenna, it would be, well, perhaps it would change the whole world, couldn't it? I mean, if everyone knew that we weren't alone in the universe and there was another race different than the human race that we are, then perhaps people would unite in an attempt to somehow reach back, to communicate back to another civilization. It's hard to say. As I say, we don't know if there are any other living beings in the universe. We'd like to think that's at least possible, and we keep listening. But if that were to happen, I think it could quite possibly change the world as we know it. And if anything, it would make us perhaps recognize just how valuable our Earth is as the place where we live, as our home that we need to take care of in the best way that we can. Now, moving on from that idea, how could we possibly ever meet aliens if they did exist and if we did hear from them? There are a couple of things to consider. If people wanted to respond back, it is the most likely scenario that wherever a signal such as that might have come from would be far away. And the farther away it is, the longer that it would take to come to us. So if we were trying to speak back to that signal, whatever we say would also, based on the speed of light, which is the speed that radio waves travel, it would take just as long to go back to wherever it came from as it did to come to us. And so that could be a very long time. Now this is where the science fiction comes in. Suppose people found a way not only to travel through space, but also through time, so that they could go back in time to when that signal originated. And that's the subject of this next song, which is called A Spaceship for Two, where our heroes, Tommy and Laura, who we talk about on the TV show Space Quest with Dr. Jim, they build themselves a ship that can do both, go through time and space. And ultimately that's because in the story, way off in the future, with a radio telescope on Mars, a signal does come from an alien race, and Tommy and Laura are the ones who are recruited to build their ship and learn all they can about space travel in order to somehow go and meet the civilization that sent the message. This song is called A Spaceship for Two. Tommy took a look around at the sky and at the ground. He began to think about what he could see. Clouds float up, but rain falls down. Diamonds form beneath the ground. Many things exist because of gravity. Tommy's rocket was a blast. Laura's ship was very fast, and together they could go so very far. They combined all that they knew, and they built a ship for two, and someday they might just reach another star. There is science everywhere, on the land and in the air. Tommy learned to see the patterns, big and small. He designed fast planes and cars, but he looked up at the stars. He built rockets to explore and see them all. Tommy's rocket was a blast. Laura's ship was very fast, and together they could go so very far. They combined all that they knew, and they built a ship for two, and someday they might just reach another star. Who can say what they'll learn today to help them on their way? Laura loved to watch planes fly as they streaked across the sky. She began to learn to take off and be free. She flew gliders, then fast jets, and took people and their pets to the edge of space to float in zero-G. Tommy's rocket was a blast. Laura's ship was very fast, and together they could go so very far. They combined all that they knew, and they built a ship for two, and someday they might just reach another star. Who can say what they learned today to help them on their way? Tommy learned to fly in space. It became her favorite place. Tommy left the earth behind to go explore. There was so much they could see in the realm of mystery. Many moons and planets led them to much more. Tommy's rocket was a blast. Laura's ship was very fast, and together they could go so very far. They combined all that they knew, and they built a ship for two, and someday they might just reach another star. And someday they might just reach another star. Now, before Tommy and Laura could go reach another star, like the song was saying, they had to learn a lot. They had to learn about what we call STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Sometimes people put an A in there for the arts, so then it's STEAM, or it's STEAM. I've been very fortunate more than once to play at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum as a STEAM artist, meaning a scientist who is also a musician or some other form of art. And it's a very interesting thing to see a combination of science and art together. That's one of the great reasons to support the Arlington Planetarium, to come and see the shows, because there's so many people that have shown wonderful scientific presentations in the sky shows that are also very artistic. I remember seeing a beautiful show about monarch butterflies, which are not about space, but they are about biology. And it was very interesting to see the life cycle and how they would hatch and emerge and turn into butterflies and fly, I believe, to the southern hemisphere. And it was just fascinating, the combination of art and science. So if you're watching this show and you're interested in space and science, it's okay to also be interested in music and other forms of art. I've had some kids talk to me in the schools about learning to play the guitar because they've seen me play guitar. I even had a very lovely young little first grader asked me one time if I'm a scientist, why is it that I'm also a singer? Well, the answer is it's okay to do both. It's okay to be interested in those things. If you feel a passion for something or an interest, just try it. One thing that's happened during this pandemic, apparently, is that sales of guitars have increased. I think that's because people who have thought that they always wanted to learn guitar wanted to get one so that they could try doing that at home. So I would encourage you to pursue your interests, pursue math and science if that interests you, if you want to learn more about space, but also think about other artistic venues if you like. Okay? Now, here we are moving right along with the story of Tommy and Laura, our kid explorers from the future, who are child prodigies, very good at math and science, who learn what they can, not only about how to build a ship, but also how to navigate a ship and how to travel through time using something called antimatter. But I'll get into that more in the TV show. Remember to tune in early next year to Space Quest with Dr. Jim, and I will go into that in much greater detail. But they figure out how to do it. However, Tommy and Laura, being the kids that they are, occasionally want to have a night off. So they decide to go out one night and look at the sky and see how many animal constellations they could find. This is a song coming up called The Little Bear, and I'm very, very honored that my friend Kathy Overton, who introduced this show a little while ago and works at the Arlington Planetarium, she and others on the staff there put together a beautiful sky show of The Little Bear using this song. And what they did, and what she did, was put, you'll have to imagine here for this show, but she put artwork of the different animals as they were mentioned during the song. And I really, really appreciate that very much as the songwriter-singer. But to see someone else visualize my ideas that were written into the lyrics is a great compliment, and I very, very much appreciate that about Kathy as well as all the staff that support the Arlington Planetarium. So, let me play for you The Little Bear. On one clear and cloudless night, stars were shining oh so bright. Kids went out to look up at the sky. They saw creatures great and small, then began to name them all. One looked like a horse, wings to fly. They saw the constellations with their imaginations and used the brightest stars that they could see. The North Star showed the little bear. They searched across the sky from there to find where other animals could be. High above the little bear, eagles soared up in the air. Tommy saw a bull with starry eyes. Down below a dragon slept, snakes upon their bellies crept. Laura saw a goat climb up a rise. They saw the constellations with their imaginations and used the brightest stars that they could see. The North Star showed the little bear. They searched across the sky from there to find where other animals could be. Out in front of Little Bear, they saw lions lying there, one beside another in a row. Ponies ran behind the bear, fish were swimming in a pair, rams went charging up a mountain slope. We can see the pictures in the sky if we use the twinkle in our eyes. Tall giraffes went striding by, lynxes leapt up in the sky. Laura saw the dogs begin to run. When the sun began to rise, creatures faded from their eyes. Tommy said that was a lot of fun. They saw the constellations with their imaginations and used the brightest stars they could see. The North Star showed the little bear. They searched across the sky from there to find where other animals could be. The North Star showed the little bear. They searched across the sky from there to find where other animals could be. If anyone was keeping count, there were 14 animal names in that song. Sometimes I'll have the kids at the science fair identify the animals as we go by looking at a picture of the different constellations. It's a lot of fun to do. Now, as I said, Tommy and Laura took a night off, but then they had to get back to work. You see, they very gradually started looking through the solar system and exploring the planets, and then they were given missions to go and do. And the person who got Tommy and Laura to do this work is the director of the first museum on Mars. Now you figure someday, if people colonize Mars, which is something people have talked about doing, then maybe someday, far in the future, there will be the first museum on Mars. And in the story, in the show Space Quest with Dr. Jim, there's a gentleman named Dr. Hans von Bodenheimer, who is the director of the first museum on Mars, and he's the one who recruits Tommy and Laura to go on their space adventures. One of the first things that they do is go into orbit around the Earth itself to fix a satellite that isn't quite working right. And the reason is because that's one of the satellites that we use to make sure that the Earth, the climate of the Earth, is what we think that it is. And we do things like measure the size of the ice caps, we measure how big jungles are, how the deserts change. Even the temperature of the ocean can be monitored by watching how much algae is growing in it, which changes the color. So we use Earth observation satellites for this, and NASA has several of those to keep us well informed on the status of how the Earth is. And by the way, because the Earth is big, compared to the size of a person or even an airplane, if you're flying in the atmosphere looking, you can only see so far away to the horizon. If you want to see the whole Earth at one time, you have to get back away from it, and that's what satellites are really good at doing. They go out into space, they're far enough away, they can see the whole world at once. And that's the subject of this next song, which is called How Green is the World. When we want to know how big the deserts are, and we need to see the jungles from afar, the satellites can see the world and all that's green, from far above the land and air and sea. How green is the world, to see it we must fly away into space until it fills the sky. The world is so big, we cannot see it all, but from far away, the world can look so small. Once a satellite flew high across the pole. It was looking for a growing ozone hole. But something had gone wrong, its camera took too long, and soon the pictures didn't come at all. How green is the world, to see it we must fly away into space until it fills the sky. The world is so big, we cannot see it all, but from far away, the world can look so small. Laura flew her ship to start a rendezvous. Tommy's rocket brought along a load of tools. Together they would share the satellite repair to help it do its job above the air. How green is the world, to see it we must fly away into space until it fills the sky. The world is so big, we cannot see it all, but from far away, the world can look so small. Once the kids were done, the satellite could see all the algae that was living in the sea, the hurricanes that blow, and all the Arctic snow, and everything about the earth we know. How green is the world, to see it we must fly away into space until it fills the sky. The world is so big, we cannot see it all, but from far away, the world can look so small. But from far away, the world can look so small. So that is the story of the first mission that Tommy and Laura went off to do in space to repair a satellite, which is something that happens or needs to happen fairly often. I didn't introduce myself very much for this show, but I'll go ahead and tell you that I am a space engineer, and I have studied space science for many years, and I had the fortune of working with satellites for a long time, and sometimes things really do go wrong. Sometimes satellites need to be repaired, and people have the ability to fix things from the ground by telling the satellite to do different things. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, and occasionally we have had people go into space and fix a satellite. An example of that was the space shuttle when they went up more than once to fix the Hubble Space Telescope. One time it needed a new mirror in it because there was a flaw in the way the mirror was designed, as in the mirror of a telescope having a curve, and the curve wasn't quite exactly right. So instead of putting a new mirror in, the astronauts installed new prisms and other what they call optics in front of the mirror in order to make a correction. I was very fortunate to be visiting the Jet Propulsion Lab at Pasadena, California, where NASA people were creating that particular set of prisms and other optics, and I got to see the people in the clean room wearing their suits with hair nets, and they had nut drivers, and they were able to put all this together. It was quite a moment to get to see that. And then years later, I was also fortunate to be an exchange scientist working at NASA Jet Propulsion Lab on trajectories to go visit planets like Jupiter. And while I was there, I got to sign the logbook for the Mars Curiosity rover, along with many, many other people, so you understand. But I did get to sign the logbook. My understanding is that every page was digitized and stored on the Mars Curiosity rover. So in the story, in my television show Space Quest with Dr. Jim, it's Dr. Hans von Bodenheimer and other people at the first museum on Mars who find my name along with all the others that were stored on the Mars Curiosity rover many years from now. And that's why my friends, these robots, have come back in time to visit me on the show. Now, another thing that Tommy and Laura did when they first started doing their missions in space was to go visit the moon. Last year, 2019, was the 50th anniversary of the first moon landing back in July of 1969. In this particular story, the kids go back to the moon and they look for all the places that Apollo had landed. This song is called To Follow Apollo, and I was very, very privileged and honored to get to play this song for lots and lots of people on the night of July 20th, 2019, a little more than a year ago now, at the Air and Space Museum in downtown Washington, D.C., where lots of people came to celebrate this moment. It was a wonderful evening. I will never forget it. And I suppose some of the friends who may be watching this show now were among the ones who came to see me playing for the kids there and the families. And so I appreciate all of you who came to visit that night, and I encourage all of the rest of you to learn what you can about those Apollo missions. They were very complicated. There was a lot to them. Now this song is called To Follow Apollo. Long ago we flew the lunar missions to explore. Since that one small step we haven't been there anymore. Robots fly out to the moon and circle round and round, but kids could land their spaceships there and walk upon the ground. To follow Apollo around the moon they flew, to find some reminders of spaceships and their crew. Tommy did a survey of the landing sites of old. Laura found some clues by reading stories that were told. There were pictures of the landing sites and see the famous places all before the lunar night. To follow Apollo around the moon they flew, to find some reminders of spaceships and their crew. Astronauts went to the moon and landed there 6 times. Every place was different, there were rocks of many kinds. There were 3 more missions planned but never got to fly. So now the kids could finish what Apollo dared to try. To follow Apollo around the moon they flew, to find some reminders of spaceships and their crew. They came in peace for all mankind and made their mark for kids to find. First they found 6 places where some history was made. Looking from a distance, they could see the way things stayed. Then they planted flags in 3 more places on the moon and finished for Apollo what had ended far too soon. To follow Apollo around the moon they flew, to find some reminders of spaceships and their crew. if you get a chance to see the stuff at the Smithsonian Museum, at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, they're remodeling it now, but eventually it's going to reopen, and there will be a new gallery for all of the Apollo missions and the equipment. For many years, though, there was a very extensive gallery, and one of the things that they showed of equipment that the Apollo astronauts took to the moon was a laser retroreflector array. Okay, now what that is a set of little reflectors that were mounted in a square piece of aluminum that was at an angle on the face of the moon that the astronauts left there, and they pointed it so it was facing directly at the Earth. Now remember, because the moon always keeps one side toward the Earth, that means that if you were standing on the moon, which they were doing, and you look up in the sky at the Earth would appear to be pretty much in the same place all the time. Not exactly, because the moon's orbit isn't exactly a circle, but for the most part, within a small area, the Earth stays in about the same place. That means that back on the Earth, people can use a large laser, such as at an observatory or perhaps a university. And I was very fortunate to get to do this one time at the University of Austin in Texas, University of Texas at Austin, pardon me, where I got to use a laser and see the return come back from the moon. But because we know how fast light travels, and we can figure out how much time it took for a signal to go out and back, people can measure the distance to the moon. This is a very interesting thing that people still do today. And because of that, we know that the moon is moving away from the Earth very slowly, about a centimeter or two a year, which isn't very much compared to 250,000 miles almost that the moon is away. But it is moving away slightly. And the reason for that is because of the tides. As the tides go up and down on the Earth, not only the water, but even the land on the Earth changes a little bit in height because of the moon's orbit. Energy is lost in that system such that the moon is gradually moving away from the Earth, which means that way in the past it must have been much closer, right? So that's my story about the moon for you. Now, as I see we have about 15 minutes left, I'm going to talk to you about the next mission that Tommy and Laura went on when they started going to other planets. In this case, they went to the planet that is closest to the moon, or excuse me, to the sun, which is Mercury. In that case, as they went there, they were looking for the remnants of a special satellite called Messenger. Messenger is a long word. It's an acronym. I won't try to tell you the whole thing, but you can look it up online. But friends of mine worked on what's called the trajectory, which means the path that it took through space, and how they used slingshot flybys against other planets in order to get the Messenger spacecraft as close as they could to the planet Mercury, and eventually they got it, after quite some time, into an orbit around the planet Mercury, which was quite a feat. That's not at all easy to do, and the explanations for that are kind of complicated, but let's just say that we don't have any rocket big enough that could have allowed it to do that directly. So some very clever people, as I say, some friends of mine, worked on how to use interplanetary flybys, several of them, in order to get it in just the right conditions so that it could be orbiting the planet Mercury. But at the end of the mission of Messenger, when it ran out of fuel, the plan had been from the beginning to deliberately crash it into the surface of Mercury so that the pieces would stay there and we would know exactly where they were. So, or at least that we knew they were on the surface of Mercury somewhere. So in this story, Tommy and Laura go to Mercury to find what's left of Messenger, but they run into a little problem. So here is the song called the Countdown Song. Now, if you want to sing along on this song, this is the one where the chorus is just the set of numbers 10 down to 1. And let me play the chorus for you so you can practice it once with me and then sing it along if you like. It goes like this. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Now, if you can remember that, sing it along, okay? Tommy took his rocket all the way to Mercury. Laura flew her spaceship down to find a mystery. Metal bits were scattered on the ground beneath their feet. Tommy said, "That's Messenger, a mission now complete." Are you ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. After they went searching for some pieces of the past, Tommy noticed something wrong, and then he looked aghast. When his rocket landed, it came down on bumpy ground. It would tilt and make a funny creaking sound. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. With the rocket leaning, it would never reach the sky. They would need to figure out a way to make it fly. Laura used her ship to pull the rocket straight and true. Tommy filled the craters so the ground was level too. You ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. When they worked together, they could solve most anything. All they needed was the time to think of everything. With some help from Laura and some rocks to fill the trough, now they both were ready for the rocket to take off. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So they did make it off the planet Mercury because of some help when they worked together. And I think that's a great lesson, isn't it? That it takes a team to solve complicated problems like that. But if you take a lot of time and very carefully think about your problems, just maybe you can figure out a solution to them. So as I like to say on my TV show, keep your eye on the sky and keep thinking for yourself. You'd be surprised what you can figure out. Now, the next mission that I would like to tell you about that Tommy and Laura went on was to go to the planet Jupiter. As I mentioned earlier, I was very fortunate to get to work with NASA for a little while on some designs of paths through space, or trajectories as they are called, to go from the Earth ultimately to Jupiter and then to one of the 4 biggest moons. Jupiter has a lot of moons, but there are 4 of them that are big enough that they're called Galilean moons. And the reason they're called that is because one of the very first physicists, scientists ever, a man named Galileo, many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, built a telescope to look at the night sky. And when he looked at Jupiter, he saw these 4 points of light that would change positions every night fairly quickly. And it turned out they were moons, and nobody knew up until then that there were moons around other planets. But Galileo was the one who saw them and figured this out. One of them is called Europa. It is the smallest of the 4 large moons of Jupiter, but it's perhaps the most interesting because it's very, very smooth. The surface of it is frozen ice as far as we know, and we think from measurements taken by spacecraft that have gone to Jupiter that there's perhaps a deep saltwater ocean underneath the ice. If so, it's possible, and we don't know, but it's possible there might be life in that water based on volcanic vents on the floor of that ocean, in the same way that there's life near the volcanic vents on the floor of the ocean here on the Earth too. In fact, if they're right, scientists believe there's more water on Europa than there is on the Earth, which is very interesting given that the Earth is much larger. But we're talking about a very deep ocean. Another friend of mine is in charge of a mission called Europa Clipper, and they're looking now at the possibility of flying a spacecraft around Europa because there are geysers of water that come up like volcanoes, and if so, then a spacecraft could fly through them, capture some of the water, and analyze it to see if there's any microbial life without ever having to land and drill down through. But that's another possibility, is to land on Europa with a device that could actually go down and release a robot underneath. So here is a song called Mission to Europa, where Tommy and Laura do just that. Laura went to Jupiter and Tommy went along with her. They found it soon, an icy moon. At Europa there would be below the ice a deep dark sea where ships could dive and might survive. Way down low below the ice of Europa, kids could find brand new life, hopefully. And when they go below the ice of Europa, things could be swimming free in that sea. In Europa, they would look down through the water when they took their ships below the ice and snow. Deep inside the icy moon, they had to look through dark and gloom to see if signs were left behind. Way down low below the ice of Europa, kids could find brand new life, hopefully. And when they go below the ice of Europa, things could be swimming free in that sea. Jupiter has many moons that range from big to small. One is called Europa, it's the smoothest icy ball. Laura sent a robot out to swim the sea and try to scout for tracks and marks, or maybe sharks. Tommy gave the robot fuel to run for years and use its tools to search alone and phone back home. Way down low below the ice of Europa, kids could find brand new life, hopefully. And when they go below the ice of Europa, things could be swimming free in that sea. Jupiter has many moons that range from big to small. One is called Europa, it's the smoothest icy ball. After many years went by, the robot did its best to try to find some clues and send the news. Someday we may know the truth with extraordinary proof that life could be down in that sea. Way down low below the ice of Europa, kids could find brand new life, hopefully. And when they go below the ice of Europa, things could be swimming free in that sea. Things could be swimming free in that sea. Now let me tell you something about the end of that song. When I sing, "Someday we may know the truth with extraordinary proof," the life could be down in that sea. The gentleman that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Carl Sagan, who has passed away quite a while ago now, but he said one time, and I'm paraphrasing, that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And I wanted to make sure to get that into this one song because, again, the theme for today, for this show, is called Voices from the Sky. And the real question is there other life elsewhere in the universe, or even elsewhere in our solar system? And no one wanted to find that more than Carl Sagan did. But he was very careful. He was a good scientist, which means that he maintained a healthy skepticism of any claims, unless they could be shown to be true with actual proof. And that's the hallmark of science, is to make sure that we know that we're right based on proof and based on reproducibility of results. That's what science is all about. So let me finish up here with one more song. We're coming up on about an hour here, and I appreciate those of you who have tuned in to listen in and are perhaps watching this at a later time. I wish you the best in this time of many challenges. As I say, normally I would be doing a show like this with a full band, and we would be at the Arlington Planetarium, and let's hope that we'll get to do that again perhaps next year. And for those of you who are wondering why my robots are not wearing masks, it's because they have had their antivirus software updates. In any case, I want to sing for you a birthday song, all right? Now, at one point, Tommy and Laura, after they've been doing a fair amount of exploring, decided to have a birthday party on the Earth. Now, just by means of background, Tommy is from Mars, where his companion, Piper, the robot, the two of them work on Tommy's father's rocket fuel plant on Mars way off in the future, okay? Vista is an astronomer robot, and that's why you see that her eyes look like binoculars. Vista stands for Visual and Infrared Starlight Analyst, and Piper is the primary inspector of the Pipe Examiner robots. If you want to hear more from Piper and Vista, be sure to watch the show Space Quest with Dr. Jim at jimthornemusic.com, where you can see all 6 episodes via YouTube if you like, and you'll get to hear them talk there. Right now, because they've just traveled through time, they haven't quite settled yet, so they're not speaking to us at the moment, but they're listening in. Anyway, here we go. The last song I'm going to do for you is called Stars Are Red, Stars Are Blue. It's a birthday song because Tommy and Laura have the same birthday, even though Tommy's from Mars and Laura's from Venus, but they meet up with their families on Earth together to have a special birthday party. When Laura had her birthday, Tommy had his birthday too. To celebrate together, they invented something new. They used their ships to skywrite, linking stars with colored lines. They wrote a simple message, wishing each a happy time. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. When Tommy's parents raised him far beneath the planet Mars, they lived in caves all filled with air and dreamed about the stars. His father's plant made rocket fuel for ships to fly in space. They used a crew of robots to inspect and keep things safe. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. They would work together, riding spaceships in the sky, to help explore the universe and see the stars go by. When Laura's parents raised her on a station in the sky, she learned to find the asteroids that might come zipping by. The station followed Venus in its path around the sun. They had a friendly robot that would help and have some fun. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. They would work together, riding spaceships in the sky, to help explore the universe and see the stars go by. To celebrate their birthdays, both the families met on Earth. They threw a great big party full of merriment and mirth. The kids wrote happy birthday with their ships up high in space. The colors were reflected onto every smiling face. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Stars are red, stars are blue, happy birthday just for you. Well, I'd like to thank you for watching, whether you tuned in live or whether we're watching later. Either way, I really appreciate it. And again, keep your eye on the sky and keep thinking for yourself.
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate you taking the time and helping us out here as we try to continue to bring more programming and events and education to people in Arlington and around the world as we're virtual. We hope that you will keep an eye out for more programming from the Friends of the Planetarium. We hope that you keep your eyes to the sky, as Dr. Jim says, and that you keep that curiosity going. We're hoping that we will continue to bring you more virtual events for now while we're in the pandemic, and that we will start bringing you hopefully in-person events again next year sometime as hopefully everything gets better. And we will see you folks soon. So until then, please everyone stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.